Welcome back, and joining us now is Colorado Springs Mayor Steve Bach. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today.
Lisa, thank you for having me.
Mayor Bach, let's talk a minute. It's been a year now since Waldo Canyon. Can you reflect on the past year?
Well, it seems like it's been a long time, really. Looking back now, I'll always remember that Tuesday, that afternoon at that media conference, and Rich Harvey, the incident commander, was explaining to the media what was happening to the fire. It was moving back toward Colorado Springs, but up until then, slowly. We had been told we'd have at least 4 hours notice before we would need to evacuate the north half of Mountain Shadows and up to Peregrine. And Rich Harvey turned around to point to the map, and I was standing next to him, and his mouth dropped open. And so I turned around, and I couldn't believe what I saw, Lisa. It's a wall of flame, 50, 100 feet high, racing down the mountains in the Mountain Shadows. It was as if a giant blowtorch had just totally exploded. And so it was obviously a very stressful moment for everybody.
I remember that. It was just instantaneous, watching you guys from the anchor desk, and you could see it growing behind you. Let's talk about the response from your city staff.
Well, it's unbelievable from the beginning. You know, when I became mayor, I was briefed by our emergency management staff on what to do or what I would be asked to do in the event of an emergency, and which was very professional and very well organized. And they talked about the risk of wildfire. We've always thought that we might have a serious wildfire beginning on Cheyenne Mountain, which is still a possibility today. And that would be even worse because there's so many more homes up in that area, and it's not as many escape routes and a lot more fire fuel up in that area. So I don't know that we really anticipated a fire coming into the northwest part of the city, other than the fire department and the residents of Cedar Heights have done a great job over the recent years in mitigating risk in that neighborhood, and that's what saved Cedar Heights. But unbelievable response by everybody involved, obviously all the brave firefighters, the police officers, our public works people, our emergency management staff, our communications staff. Colorado Springs Utilities saved Cedar Heights. Colorado Springs Utilities staff were up in there bulldozing fire breaks above Cedar Heights that first Saturday, and so also the county, the sheriff, and all the other resources that came to bear. So I'm just so thankful for all those great people, and we lost 2 precious lives, as you know. Bill and Barbara Everett tragically died in that fire. But Lisa, it could have been so much worse, so I'm just thankful for that.
And what have we learned? You touched on, oh my goodness, if something were to happen, Broadmoor Bluffs, Skyway area, and the mitigation, it's so important.
You know, this fire, Waldo Canyon Fire, started in the National Forest, which is county land, but up in the National Forest, and so we did not have jurisdiction to go out and fight that fire. And we had to wait until we were asked for help, and then the winds picked up, and then we really couldn't do much until the fire came into the city limits. We had a lot of people positioned to fight that fire as soon as it came into our city limits, but we had a front come down the Front Range, 65-mile-an-hour winds, and it grabbed that fire and just pulled it right down the Mountain Shadows. So to your question, a lot of the things we've learned. And there was an after-action report that I think accurately portrays both what really well and what needs to get better. We were not on the same radio frequency with other fire units coming in to help. We had fire companies showing up in Colorado Springs that we didn't know were coming. I'm not sure we had great communications in terms of how we dealt with the county. So we learned those lessons. More importantly is what we must do as citizens. And again, I look at Cedar Heights as the best example of how to save a neighborhood. Those folks up there went to work over the last 3 years with the fire department, and they removed underbrush and pine needles and all kinds of fuel that could cause a fire to destroy homes. And that's what saved Cedar Heights. There are people yet today, and I have friends who live in the wildfire interface area of our city who keep telling me, yeah, we need to get to that. We need to mitigate. Well, you know, you got to give us a chance. People need to create defensible space around their homes. And, you know, you can call our fire department today, and we have a wildland fire administrator who will come out and bring experts with her, and will go through your home and also around your home and tell you, here are the things that need to happen. Both the Waldo Canyon Fire and more recently in the Black Forest Fire, people, for example, did not remove the propane tanks from their outdoor cookers. Well, a fire comes close to a propane tank, it's going to explode. And so folks need to do a number of things. Number one, have a list to follow in the case of emergency. Susie, my wife, and I have a friend, great person, living in Black Forest, who was told 20 minutes to evacuate. 10 minutes into that period, that friend called Susie and said, I can't think. I'm under so much pressure. Can you help me think through what more I need to do? We all need to have a list. What's the most important thing to do in an emergency? What's second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth? And you go down the list as far as you can, but so you don't have to try to rely on your memory in that kind of an urgent situation. Creating defensible space is critical outside of your home.
Mayor, that's all great advice, and you're right. We don't need to procrastinate. We need to do it today. Let's talk. I'm going to take you back a minute. I remember this night. I know you remember this night when you called everyone in Mountain Shadows together at UCCS. You and Susie lived in Mountain Shadows. These are your neighbors. These are your friends. You had to tell them who had lost their home, whose home was still standing. How difficult was that for you?
Well, it was more difficult for my staff. We decided to have a brief combined meeting with all the folks from Mountain Shadows and then to break out by neighborhoods. And so I asked my executive team, the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, police chief, Laura Newman, my chief of staff, our city attorney, and others who had no, I don't think, previous training in grief management to convene those neighborhood meetings. They did unbelievably well. I'm still struck by the people who were affected, who were there that night. Their grace, their resiliency, just amazing to me. A few people pretty darn upset, I would be too, who found out they lost their homes, but so many came up to me and said, you know, Mayor, it's just stuff. Just incredible people, and I'm meeting some of the same kinds of people now after the Black Forest fire. And you know, the rest of the community, the way this community pulled together after Waldo Canyon is unbelievable to me. And Bob Cutter, an old friend of mine, I called, I said, I need help on how we're going to help Mountain Shadows be restored, not only physically, but psychically, really, spiritually in a way. And he stepped forward, no compensation. He spent a year, marshaled hundreds of resources of people. So people were just amazing to me.